The STS preparation and presentation gold sheet is described by the color gold because it has always served as the primary template for the STS method. However, since we work in so many preferred oral cultures, the need arose for a truly oral gold sheet that did not need literacy to be understood. This oral gold sheet uses no printed words, but only graphic pictures to help us follow each part of a story preparation. The total preparation time for an STS story takes 80 minutes, and it's represented by this outer circle of 60 minutes. The remaining 20 minutes of preparation is shown within the inner circle. During the first 10 minutes of preparation, the tribe leader will pray, and then he will ask, what do we do first in order to do preparation? Yes, we need to learn the story, and that's why we open our palms. The leader then reads the story aloud. The tribe is seated, and they close their eyes and they picture the story as it develops. And then the leader asks, who would like to retell the story? The leader may give maybe half a sentence as a starter, but the leader needs to be careful not to help them out. Then the leader will read it a second time aloud, and this time encourage the people in the group to use actions and their expressions. And the third time, you want to make it more conversational, and you want to change those pronouns into proper names. So we prayed, and then we learned the story, and what do we do next? Yes, we're going to do spiritual observations. And this is going to take about 45 minutes. At this point, you want to review that wise counselor parable or story. And what were those first two questions that the wise counselor asked? Yes, he was asking about the problem, that situation. For me, it's what's on the table? What are we dealing with? And this is where you make that emotional connection with the group. Secondly, what happened before the problem? That is the context. Now, the leader will have had time to actually prepare previously that context. After that, what did the wise counselor do? Well, he had those people tell the story section by section, slowly, but including all of the details. As we make spiritual observations, we need to review the wise counselor's story and remember the meaning of each of those three main characters. You have the old woman. She's having trouble with the neighbor who was using too much of the water. And then you have the young man who felt like he needed to guard that well, and yet at the same time he wasn't so sure he had made the right choice. Then the young mother who was bringing along her daughter who was limping because she had got involved with the altercation at the well. So you have these three key characters that the wise counselor was talking to. So you have from the 10 minutes to the 50 minutes the spiritual observation. First character is the old woman, issue with her neighbor, and she's going to represent the things that were said and done. Then the wise counselor will always be thinking, what must I learn, or what might I learn spiritually from what is being said and done? And then the young man, well, he's trying to guard the well, and he's wondering, did I make a good decision or not? And that represented the choice that was made, but also the options or the other choices that could have been made. And once again, the wise counselor will be thinking, what can I learn from the decisions or the choices that were made in that story, or what can I understand by the other choices that were possible? And then the young mom that was bringing along her child that was limping. What was the immediate impact, and then the long-standing results? So you have results, which are immediate, and then the impact that hits a lot of people in the future. And that's, to me, like dropping a stone into water and then seeing the ripple effect go out. There's one question the wise counselor doesn't ask, and that is, what can we learn about God? And God is involved in every story in the scriptures, and so you don't want to miss asking that particular question. Now, in the last 5 minutes of the spiritual observation, actually from 50 minutes into 55 minutes, the leader can give more guided and directed type questions in order to finish off the story. Now, at the 55-minute point, you only have 5 minutes, and you're going to ask the tribe, do you like the story? Could you tell this to your friends or your family? Who would like to tell a story to another tribe? There's no pressure on this. So at this point, you want to select your storyteller and then help them determine a situation question. And that's that emotional connection to the story. Next, you want to ask, do you remember how we found the spiritual observations? And that's right, we use questions. So we could restate a particular section of the story, and then we apply those wise counselor questions to that. And the leader certainly can demonstrate to that storyteller just how this process works. Now, 60 minutes to 70 minutes, this is done by reviewing a lesson or a principle that you got from the spiritual observations, and then you want to reshape those into a spiritual application. So you're going to look at a section, you had identified a lesson or a principle through your spiritual observation, and then you make the application after you get that spiritual observation. Now, there are basically 4 things in the various steps of an application, and that is, does it happen today? What does it look like? Have you or someone you know experienced it? And then you can ask them, would you like to share? And that's just basically starting out in a very general way and then moving more specifically. 5th one you could add would be, is there anything from this story that might help you into the future? So from the 70 minutes to the 80 minutes, we're going to finish the preparation. And we want to discuss the introduction. Different things have been placed upon the shelf during the process of the preparation, and you might want to bring some of those off of that shelf. You want to review the 5 presentation parts as a tribe, and this is where the tribe can get all involved with, you want to pray, tell the story, you're going to have your volunteer lead through spiritual observations, spiritual application. So you want to make sure that that storyteller knows those 5 basic steps. You want to make sure the storyteller is prepared for a lead through, and he needs to practice that lead through and show that he can actually do it. You're going to have about 3 different aspects of the lead through that you're going to encourage them to review, and that is filling in. You're going to be completing a sentence or completing an idea, and then you'll have maybe one opposite. You don't want to have a lot of opposites. You could make it much too comical if you add more than maybe just one opposite. They should know how to do the actions and expressions, and that's shown by this couple dancing there, because a lot of it's communicated through actions and expressions. And then you want to make sure you pray with the storyteller before you send them off, and give them some time to actually look the scripture over, time to meditate, and kind of get their mind prepared for the actual telling. So the timeline of the 80 minutes of preparation, you've got 10 minutes to pray and learn the story, 45 minutes for the spiritual observation, 5 minutes to identify the storyteller, form that situation question, help them to form spiritual observation questions by reviewing the wise counselor, and then you want to give them practical examples of spiritual observations. The next 10 minutes is forming those application questions. The last 10 minutes are to check what is on that shelf. You want to review the introduction, the 5 steps of the actual presentation, and then make sure they can do the lead-through. Now, having finished the preparation of the story in the kitchen, we're ready to actually serve the story in the presentation phase. A typical presentation takes 30 minutes. Now, another 15 minutes can be used to debrief the story for the benefit of the storyteller and allow the tribe to evaluate as well. 30 minutes of presentation, and the storyteller begins by introducing him or herself to the group and beginning with prayer. The storyteller then starts by giving the introduction with a closed Bible while he's standing up, he or she's standing up, and then opens the Bible as they begin the story and then hands the open Bible to a checker or places it in an appropriate place. And then you want to make sure they tell that story with actions and expressions. Next, the storyteller asks one volunteer to actually retell as best they remember it. Then the storyteller gives the first sentence and affirms that person when it is finished. If there's no volunteer, I usually say, well, let's pair up. Then the lead-through starts by saying, let's tell the story again, and you can help me. The storyteller can then fill in a word or idea, complete the sentence, but use no more than one opposite. Now, after the first 3 steps of the presentation, the storyteller begins the spiritual observation section by asking a situational question and then tells the first part of the story as he or she forms those spiritual observation questions and is always using the wise counselor questions. The storyteller should be careful to listen and respond to the participants. This section will take about 15 minutes. During the final 5 minutes, the storyteller begins to ask spiritual application questions and ends the story in prayer. The storyteller should always tell them where the story can be found in the Bible. The storyteller departs to be debriefed by his coach, and then the tribe can spend 7 minutes discussing that presentation. The tribe leader should ask, what would you say to the storyteller in a positive way, and what ideas would you give them to make their storytelling even better? This will take about 3 minutes. After the tribe shares, then the tribe leader has 4 minutes to actually give his suggestions. Now, the final 8 minutes, the tribe leader takes the storyteller aside one-on-one while the tribe takes a break. The tribe leader begins by pointing out several positives that they heard during that story time, then offers suggestions for improvement, always making sure to give specific, attainable examples of how the presentation or questions came across. I trust this oral description of STS preparation and the presentation process using this oral gold sheet. I really trust that it has been a profitable time for you. And I would encourage you to print it out, review it often as you strive to improve your skills as a biblical storyteller.